man out for a routine jog suddenly found himself with the strangest running partner imaginable on what seemed like an ordinary evening. Ethan Miller caught the sound of something trailing behind him, the frantic rhythm of tiny footfalls working hard to keep up with his pace. At first, he brushed it off as a neighbor's loose dog, but when he turned his head, what he saw made him falter. A scruffy little Bobcat Kitten was bounding after him, short tail arched, eyes blazing with determination. Where was its mother, and why had it locked onto him? When the kitten finally tapped against his shoe and planted two shaky paws on it, like it had just conquered a marathon, Ethan realized something extraordinary. He had been chosen. Onlookers gasped and cheered. But what he uncovered about this fragile orphan soon placed him before an impossible, heart-wrenching choice. What do you do when the wild doesn't run from you, but instead runs to you? Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. The late October sun hung low, stretching long shadows across Meadow Creek Park's winding running path. For Ethan, this trail was more than painted asphalt. It was a sanctuary. 10 kilometers of rhythm and release, a space where the noise of his daily life dissolved into the steady cadence of breath and footfall. AT-32, Ethan lived life taut and precise. His career as a software engineer demanded relentless focus, leaving him wired with half-finished algorithms and looping thoughts long after work. Running was his escape, the one place where screens and code gave way to the simple, grounding beat of his own body in motion. He was on the final stretch now. His watch flashed 8.12 kilometers. Just under 2 to go, he muttered, breath forming soft clouds in the crisp air. Sweat dampened his collar, his muscles humming with a familiar burn as he pushed forward. Around him, the park thrived with evening life. Children laughing under sycamores, a golden retriever tugging its elderly owners toward a squirrel's climb. Families spread across manicured lawns framed by wild meadows and ancient oaks. It was peaceful, ordinary, safe, and then he heard it. At first, it was barely more than a whisper against the swish of his strides. A quick, persistent tapping. A rhythm trying to keep in sync with his own. Ethan dismissed as a rabbit or squirrel. The trail was full of them. He fixed his gaze ahead, rounding the curve, but the sound didn't fade. It grew clearer, firmer. Not the random skitter of prey, but something deliberate, something following that up ahead. 3 women in bright yoga pants stopped mid-conversation, their chatter cut short. They turned toward Ethan, eyes wide. One pointed. "Oh my gosh, look!" she exclaimed. "What is that?" Another whispered. Stifling a laugh, a ripple of unease prickled along Ethan's spine. He hated being the focus of attention, but curiosity got the better of him. He risked a glance back. Not a terrier, not a chihuahua. His brain stuttered as reality registered. Charging after him, face set in fierce determination, was a Bobcat Kitten. It couldn't have been more than a few weeks old, a scruffy, spotted bundle of fur no larger than his 2 fists. Its tufted ears were pinned flat like a tiny fighter jet, its stubby tail arched in defiance. Oversized paws pounded the ground in a frantic gallop. Its mouth hung open in a silent, breathless mew as it chased him with everything it had. Its tiny pink tongue flicked out between panting breaths. The most absurdly adorable predator Ethan had ever seen. For a moment, his brain refused to reconcile the image. A bobcat, a wild bobcat, chasing him. The word alone conjured strength and danger, but the little bundle of spotted fur behind him looked like something that belonged on a postcard, not in pursuit of a grown man. Instinct jolted through him. Where there's a kitten, there's a mother. His eyes swept the tree line, the tall meadow grass, heart rate spiking for reasons entirely unrelated to running. But nothing stirred. No sleek feline form waiting in ambush, only the sun bleeding into golds and oranges across the park. The unease shifted to a bewildered kind of amusement as laughter bubbled from the women nearby. It wasn't cruel, but full of wonder at the sheer strangeness of the moment. "You've got yourself a wild cardio partner," one called, already raising her phone. "Don't let that baby cat beat you." Another tease between fits of laughter. Ethan flushed scarlet. His life was built on quiet routines, a minimalist apartment, a tiny circle of friends, predictable order. And now, he was center stage in a comedy he never auditioned for, chased down by a wild kitten while strangers filmed it for posterity. He lengthened his stride, half-heartedly trying to pull ahead. But the kitten dug deep, legs a blur, gaze locked on him. It refused to give up. The absurdity was overwhelming. Here he was, a 32-year-old man, being hunted by something that could have starred on a greeting card. The crowd around the trail grew as laughter rippled outward. Still, The kitten never slowed. Each bound carried it closer, its breathing ragged but relentless. Then, with one last burst of effort, it launched forward and bumped into the back of his shoe. The impact was soft, a muffled thud of fur and determination. But to Ethan, it felt like the whole surreal chase had ended in that single touchdown. He stopped, slowly turned. The kitten stood there, paws braced against his shoe, as though it had just claimed victory. Its body quivered with exhaustion, chest heaving, eyes wide and golden, not fierce, but pleading. It let out a weak, raspy cry that stabbed at Ethan's heart. Around them, laughter peaked. Someone shouted, "Looks like you've been chosen." And strangely, that was exactly how it felt. His runner's high had vanished, replaced by something heavier, responsibility. Kneeling down, Ethan extended a cautious hand. He expected claws, a hiss, rejection. Instead, the kitten staggered forward, pressing its head into his fingers. Its fur was soft, fragile. With a sigh, he gathered the tiny creature into his arms. It didn't resist. Light as air, bones and fluff, it melted against him, shoving its face into his shirt as though it had finally reached safety. Tremors faded, replaced by a faint, rhythmic purr that hummed through Ethan's chest. He rose, scanning the meadows again. The shadows stretched long. No mother, no call, no watchful eyes glinting from the trees. Just silence in the sinking sun. "All right, little one," Ethan murmured. "Guess you're coming with me." The last 2 kilometers of his run forgotten, he carried the kitten back toward his car, the laughter of strangers fading behind him. What had begun as a jog to clear his mind had ended with one question pressing into him as heavily as the heartbeat against his palm. What on earth do you do with a baby bobcat? Back inside the stillness of his second-floor apartment, the wildness of his new companion became impossible to ignore. Back in his apartment, Ethan's arm still felt the weight of the small creature, though it was feather-light. His living space, a shrine to order with clean lines, minimalist furniture, and neatly arranged books, now felt invaded by something untamed. On the blanket of silence lay a sleeping ball of wilderness. He folded an old fleece into a cardboard box, fashioning a makeshift den. Gently, he set the kitten down. It barely stirred, curling tighter, nose tucked under its stubby tail, lost in a sleep born of exhaustion. But Ethan had noticed more than fatigue. Beneath the fur, its spine and ribs pressed sharp against his palms. Hunger had carved it hollow. Frantic searching on his phone confirmed what he already suspected. Cow's milk was useless, even harmful. What it needed was kitten formula, and he needed it immediately. Leaving the tiny bobcat asleep, Ethan drove to the nearest 24-hour pet supply store. The fluorescent aisles, stacked with gourmet kibble and squeaky toys, felt like another world compared to the primal chase that had ended in his arms. At the register, with formula and tiny bottles in hand, he rehearsed a lie about a stray house kitten. No one asked it on the drive back. A name surfaced. Simple, unpretentious. Bobby. Somehow it fit. The first feeding was clumsy. Ethan mixed the formula, tested the warmth on his wrist, then coaxed the kitten awake. Bobby blinked at him with enormous golden eyes before turning his head in suspicion. But hunger won out. After a few nudges, he latched on, and the soft, steady suckling felt like the most reassuring sound Ethan had ever heard. For 2 days, Ethan's carefully structured life unraveled. His work-from-home schedule bent to the rhythm of 2-hour feedings. Coding marathons were interrupted by formula mixing and gentle cleanups with a warm cloth in the quiet hours. He found himself kneeling by the box, marveling at details. The black tufts on Bobby's ears, the twitch of paws in sleep, the faint musky scent that clung to his fur. Slowly, strength returned. Bobby ventured from the box, wobbling across the rug, discovering the thrill of pouncing on a dust bunny or batting at Ethan's shoelaces. And when evening came, the kitten would clamber onto Ethan's chest, curl up over his heart, and purr with a resonance far too big for his small frame. For Ethan, the moments cracked open the lonely precision of his life. It was terrifying and exhilarating, but reality pressed in. Ethan was a logical man, and problems demanded solutions. Hours of research left him staring at stark truths, imprinting habituation unreleasable. If Bobby stays, he'll imprint on humans. Ethan read aloud from a wildlife site, the words like ash on his tongue. He will lose the fear that's essential to survival. His only chance is specialized rehabilitation. He looked at Bobby, now pawing at a plush toy with comical ferocity, the mock battle of pale shadow of the skills he'd need to survive. No plush fish could teach him to stalk prey. to evade danger, to carve a place in the wild. And Ethan, for all his tenderness, could never teach him how to be a bobcat. The decision tore at him. Every instinct screamed to keep the fragile creature safe in the warmth of his apartment. The thought of handing him to strangers, of leaving him behind bars, felt like betrayal. Yet the rational side of his mind, the side that saw problems for a living, whispered the harsher truth. Keeping Bobby would not be love. It would be selfishness. To hold on to him would condemn the kitten to a half-life in captivity, a tame shadow of the wild hunter he was meant to become. True kindness, Ethan realized, meant letting go as he sat in silence, the glow of his monitor casting pale light on his troubled face, watching as Bobby wrestled his plush fish into submission and dragged it triumphantly back to his cardboard den. If all went well, in a few months Bobby would run again, not after a startled jogger, but into the wilderness, fierce and free. The thought ached, but it was beautiful too. With a steadying breath, Ethan picked up his phone and dialed a number for the Northern California Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. The next morning's drive was quiet, the car filled with unspoken weight. Bobby rode in a carrier on the passenger seat, letting out the occasional questioning mew. Each sound cut deep. Ethan reached a finger through the grate, and Bobby pressed against it, purring, each vibration a tiny accusation. The center stood among tall pines, a collection of modest buildings and expansive outdoor enclosures. The air smelled of resin, disinfectant, and something untamed. Maria, the director, greeted him at the door, a kind, weathered woman with gentle eyes. Ethan poured out the story, the chase, the feeding, the bond. She listened patiently, then nodded. "You did exactly the right thing," she said, firm but warm, examining Bobby, who had tucked himself into the crook of Ethan's arm. "He's dehydrated and underweight, but he's a fighter. We'll get him to the vet right away." Handing him over was one of the hardest things Ethan had ever done. Bobby clung to his shirt, tiny claws pricking his skin, eyes wide with confusion. When Maria carried him away, he glanced back one last time. The door shut. Ethan stood in the lobby, arms unbearably empty.